I want to show you something. If you will take the time to watch this video, I think you'll find some interesting patterns. Because I want to show you why it is I so often bring up fear and confusion. And fear meaning in terms of an acronym, false evidence appearing real. And why it is I so often say that if you're going to rely only on how things appear, you're being led astray. And you're being led into more fear and confusion. And that fear and confusion will drive you towards madness. One of the things I wish we could all do is have a national break from social media. There's so much disinformation, misinformation, confusion, absolute absurdity, lies. It's driving everybody crazy, and it makes it difficult. I mean, the noise alone makes it very difficult for people to actually find real information or even process the information they're getting. So the level at which the flow rate, if you want to call it that, the flow rate of media that everybody's consuming is actually creating part of the problem. It's creating part of the problem because no one can actually possibly analyze all of it, and it's creating knee-jerk reactions, especially if it's hyperbolic, or not just hyperbolic, but intended to make you afraid, right? So everything looks like it's coming in unglued. And in some ways it is, but mostly it's not. What happens when you're immersed in this is it's programming your brain to see everything through that lens. So when you are viewing anything, it's just, it adds to that confirmation bias that you've been programmed with, that everything is completely being destroyed. It actually creates the environment for people to make decisions to actually do that. So you're being gamed, right? Cognitively and otherwise, you're actually being manipulated intentionally and unintentionally. And there's a spectrum between the two. Again, we're in a time where a lot of people just want to get back to normal. But a lot of people don't know what normal is. And then you've got a lot of people that are just totally, they've become completely enslaved to the fear. And look, when I talk about that's a weapon of war, it's intended to wear you down and break you. It's intended at a macro scale to destroy any possibility of addressing issues. And it actually hurts you from a health perspective. It creates an environment where you can't heal up. It actually creates an environment where you are more, you start manifesting more illnesses, because fear and worry has definitive impacts on the biochemical realities, right, that make up your physiological and psychological health. So there's a point at which people either just check out, right, pretend like nothing's happening, nothing's going on. They put, so it's a fight or flight kind of response, or they go they go full out. We're going to go and we're going to fight everything we don't like, right? But what you should understand and ask yourself why it is that you're not wired in the temporal and in your mortal coils, why that is being exploited to that extreme, and you're not your natural inclination isn't to come to some place in the middle, right? Some place in the middle to think through it, maybe back off, maybe have conversations with people that you don't normally have conversations with, discuss things, right? And realize that maybe what you're perceiving it's not that it's not real, it just doesn't have the context to actually give you, to help you understand what you're really dealing with. Unfortunately, we're also in an election year, and that amps it up even more, because everybody is fighting and everybody's jockeying for position to try to gain control, because both sides are, afraid. And there's been a lot of, manipulation, and there's been a lot of, because people were lured into doing stupid stuff in the last election, there's a lot of fear that more stuff is coming. And you're going to see that, because those that are completely ruled by fear, as long as they're in any position of power, right, and they're in a delusion, and I'm not talking about just politically, I'm talking about anywhere, what's going to happen is that's going to only fuel the other side. I've tried to show this to people for years. I've tried to explain this for years. I've done mind maps, talks, you name it. But there's a point at which society becomes so out of control and stuck in noise loops that it's almost impossible to get the point across. It makes it very, very difficult to try to explain things in any kind of cohesive way. And I get frustrated, because it isn't like I didn't see this coming. And it isn't like, I didn't prepare things that we could do as individually and collectively as in our neighborhoods and our families and, as a nation to get ahead of some of these things. Unfortunately, the way that your world works is that it's based on external realities that aren't always real and don't always benefit you by giving you the best people in the best positions at the right time. And that poses a significant problem, because we're in what now is a triggered cascade of what seems like never-ending crisis, one after another. And not all of them were necessary, right? Not all of them were going to come anyway. A lot of them have been created because of the decision making. A lot of it has been created because of lack of understanding of how complex systems work and how to actually manage crisis and how to solutioneer and deal with things, right? When you're in a crisis. That myopathy is something that's really is characteristic of what happens in fear, long duration stress, right? It actually narrows the bandwidth of your ability to be able to see options and solutions, or to think through them. And so a lot of bad decision making leads to more bad decision making and leads to more chaos and confusion and conflict and division. So then it becomes almost impossible after a certain point until there's a catastrophic breakdown, right? And that's what usually happens in nation states. It's happening in the world, in the whole global order right now. But when you look at the fact that currently, right now, there's not one single problem here in the United States that couldn't be dealt with in a logical manner, in a humane manner, and in a way that benefits the entire country, but yet none of it's getting done. I mean, from water problems, water crisis, food, supply chains, you name it. Why do you think it is that your enemies are applying that and doping that up on both sides with the fear and confusion? Because everything's hysteria, right? And as long as you're stuck in that, you're not able to actually address any of your problems, any of your issues. Well, that benefits them, right? They rise and you fall. And that's part of the paradigm you're dealing with right now. I'm sitting in here in Virginia in my loft, and I'm looking, my whiteboard's in front of me, and I've got a whole list of things in terms of dealing with the crisis and dealing with things that pop up and what we need to do, things that we could do, and things that others could contribute to actually, fill in gaps that, maybe, I'm missing, because I'm not omniscient. you know. But what's happening is what the mindset that's occurring in America is a closing of the mind and an inability and even a adverse reaction to people that actually want to solve real problems. And again, that's not going to lead anywhere good, right? That's only going to lead to more problems for everybody, unfortunately. I wish that was not the case, but unfortunately, that is, we're again, we are divided, and fear, has incredibly detrimental effects psychosocially, politically, economically, cognitively, physiologically. I mean, it goes across the board. And we're wormwooded right now. We've got some problems we're going to have to deal with, and if we don't start coming together to do that, and we don't make some changes, and that begins with each one of us being willing to do it. If we're not willing to do that, well, you're in a paradigm where the fear, the confusion, the division, the conflict that's already occurring in those divisions is going to turn into chaos. And once chaos really gets rolling, it always leads to destruction. So you need to think about that, because that's what you're being led to by your fear. As long as fear is gripping you and ruling over you, it's actually leading you to the thing you fear most. That's what I mean by it's a dictator, it's a tyrant. And again, we are going to have to change some things. We're going to have to look at things in our society, but we could do that if people will work together. But your elite are not going to be able to fix that. Just telling you. Some are capable of doing it, but they can't do it alone. And you're not going to be able to fix this simply with politics, right? I mean, you've had politics all along, right? Government actually helped create the condition. So we're going to have to fix government. We're going to have to fix our economy. We're going to have to fix our infrastructure, our educational systems. We're going to have to basically retool the entire country. That's why it has to be an all-nation, a full national mobilization, right, to be able to overcome what we're dealing with. And everybody is going to have to play a role. Everybody should be able to play a role if they want to. But currently, right now, all of that's being distorted, right? And that's why I keep solutions and ideas and concepts pretty close to the vest now, because the moment that I release some things that we can do, right, it gets divided up because of the politicization, and they take it, misappropriate it, misapply it, misuse it, and mislead the public with it. So a lot of folks like me that are bent on trying to help everybody, trying to solve our problems and bring people together to do that, are being mitigated simply by the conditions of fear and confusion in the general population and in leadership, and the divisions and the arrogance and pride that comes with not wanting to admit that you've screwed up and that you're wrong, and that what you're doing is actually creating a bigger problem. Of course, the longer you're in fear, the longer you're ruled by it, the more that pride takes hold, and you fear actually admitting that the course that you took was wrong. And that creates an even bigger cascade, right? So it amplifies that entire thing, worsening the condition. So that's essentially where we're at. If people want to talk about how we can solve some of our problems and solutions, I'm more than willing to do that, and maybe even do it live and do an open Zoom where people can sign up and we can talk about that. But you have to understand, this isn't about me, it isn't about you, it's about all of us. And right now, at every level in our society, in every part of our society, people are fighting, they're arguing, they're divided, they're isolated. I mean, I spend a lot of my time completely isolated. Not because I choose to be isolated, it's because socially I'm isolated simply because of the environment and because of my age and being single, right? Not being married or having kids. And the fact that, you know, even in our society, right, at every part, gender, right, ethnicity, right, socioeconomic, you name it, everybody is being divided up, and it's creating chaos. It's not leading to anything good. And you have to understand, if you're going to have this type of system, you're going to have to step up and take responsibility for it. You're going to have to play an active role in it, and to do that effectively, where it actually we can continue to have a republic, right, and survive the crisis over the long term, and not devolve into nothing but conflict and chaos and fighting and, you know, destruction. It's going to take humility. It's going to take people that have the courage to face their fears and to step up and say, you know what? The risk of not standing up, right? The risk of not standing up is worse than the risk, right, of hiding, right? You're going to have to see that standing up together and facing your fears and working together to solve these problems is more important than what the fear is lying to you, false evidence appearing real, right? Leading you to. You're going to have to understand that, right? Because then the fear will start shrinking, and it'll shrink fast. And then things can open up and breathe again, and things can move pretty fast for us to repair the country. If we're not willing to do that, well, you're left with a self-fulfilling prophecy. And that's a whole nother thing, right? So I want you to consider these things and why I'm telling you that, and telling you these things, because you know, a lot of us are sitting on the sidelines right now because not because we want to, it's because we've been sat on the sidelines because there's nothing we can do. Either because of the people you elect, right? Or the fear and confusion and the idiocy going on in companies, in the public and private sector, in organizations. And, you know, you're going to have to make a choice, because if you don't choose wisely, your enemies are going to pick you apart. Just telling you. It won't get better. You'll actually, by saying it's not going to get better, create that condition by not being willing to actually face the fear to make things better and working together to make things better. Right now, your enemies are working together to make things worse for you, and you're buying into it. So you're actually doing the work of those who want to see you destroyed. You're actually being a proxy for the very thing you fear most. That's the reality of it. And I mean that not only in real world terms, but also from a spiritual reality point of view. It's true. You can kick against it all you want, but it is the reality. So, again, you're in a bigger problem than left and right. You are. The problem is one side, at least, is unwilling to work with the others because since they got into power, they're not willing to actually work with anybody else. They want to blame everybody else for it. That's not going to work either. Sorry. You've got to have two willing parties that are humble enough to realize where they've made mistakes and be humble enough to actually be willing to do something about it together. And right now, you don't have that. At a governmental level, at a societal level, and you're going to have to find a way to break that, or else it's going to break you. Let me give you an idea about how to think about rural America. There are entire towns that are dead or dying. I see opportunity.
I see people that want to do something with it. They need to be empowered to do it. Scale down certain things, like for example, Disney's idea for a sustainable, right, community was Epcot. Believe it or not, he was way ahead of his time in terms of sustainability, research, right? Here are living laboratories that could be done on a small scale in rural America, that could be places where people come to actually be inspired. You can buy an entire town for less than a McMansion costs. Do you understand that? Do you know what a huge opportunity that is? These are the kinds of things I want to do. I want to bring people together, right, to re-inspire. I want to reignite people's ability to dream and think about what can be, instead of just being left to focus on what isn't, what was, what's been lost, and that they have no part to play in anything. I want to encourage them, and I want to show them snapshots of what can be, so they have something to go and take back to their own communities. That's why, again, these micro Epcots are a huge opportunity. It's also a great opportunity for research, right? To see how things work in a real environment in different climates, right? And from a cultural point of view. You'll be amazed at what we can do. You'll be amazed if you'll let it happen, right? If you will work together, if we can work together, you will be amazed. I'm telling you. Huge opportunities, right? I want us to be able, right, to inspire the next generations for generations to come. I want people to understand their part of the story. Their story matters. And how they are writing that story matters to the entire country. Right now, we've got far too many people, because of politicization, trying to delete people from their own country, from their own opportunities. I want everybody to have opportunities. I want to bring people together, not put them in little demographic boxes, right? Demographics has a place, has a context, and a proper usage. But what I'm talking about, right, preserves culture. It basically preserves multicultures. It's a multicultural perspective, but it's still unified by something deeper, greater, right? That is the America Next experience. We need to dream bigger. And we need more people to dream together to help write that story. Not boxing them off. Right? We need to encourage them. I believe in what can be done. And I think that we can do better. You can't have a society that's completely dystopian. You can't have a society where people feel like they don't have a role to play and they don't matter. Just telling you. That's going to destroy your society. Now you bring these things together. Imagine we come together and we create these miniature Epcots throughout America. where people, and I'm not talking about a theme park, I'm talking about real communities, right, where we showcase what can be done. This is not a new idea. There's a reason why a great deal of market research used to be done, right, in rural and Main Street America. Because if you can get them to buy in, well, it's going to take off. Because where do you think most of the people from the cities come from? Huh? Where do you think most of the kids go when they leave these little towns? If you want to inspire them to actually make changes that is for real, that benefits the entire country, we have to think big time about doing it for everyone. That's actually a just approach. Not push anybody down, lift everybody up. Give everybody the opportunity and see what they do with it. Not force outcomes. Right? That's a machine. Right? People are not machines. Societies are not machines. Politics are machines. And you can see how far that's gotten us. It's divided the country, and it's actually hurt our efforts across the board, regardless of where you are on. Right? That's why what I'm talking about is not about politics. Right? This is something greater. Let's show them what can be done when they're involved. Let's give them an opportunity, regardless of ethnicity, regardless of gender, regardless of where they grew up and where they're growing up and where they live. That is transformative. That is sustainable. That is how you change the world. That is a real story.
You know, Steve Jobs once said this: "Here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs and square holes, the ones who see things differently." They're not fond of rules, but you can quote them, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them. But the only thing you can't do is ignore them, because they change things. They push the human race forward, and while some may see them as crazy ones, we see genius. Because the ones who are crazy enough to think that they can change the world are the ones who do. Think different. Do you want to change the world? Men like Leonardo da Vinci, Nikola Tesla, and Ben Franklin, they changed the world. At Ben Franklin's death, French philosopher and scientist Jacques Turgot wrote, "He seized the lightning from the sky and the scepter from the hand of tyrants.